This is episode 3, just in case you were wondering.
All right, everyone. Welcome back. This is episode 3 of the Brew Crew official podcast. We got some good stuff talking about Core 21 spoilers now that the entire set has been released as of today. And then you
As
have
of
all of today
20
to
minutes ago.
digest it. Yeah, as of 2 minutes ago. And then you have all of today to digest it before Jumpstart spoilers start tomorrow. We're going to try out some new things on this podcast, and then we'll discuss what we're looking forward to most in the coming week. How's that sound, Julian?
Sounds good to me. Chev, before we dive right into the spoilers, did you want to talk about the Pro Tour at all? We did actually just have one this past weekend.
We did. Since this is a casual podcast, I have spent absolutely zero attention on the Pro Tour, but the only thing I've heard about it is Teamer Rec. Is that about some of the experience of the Pro Tour?
Yes, I paid just slightly more attention than you did, and yeah, it looked to me that Team Rec was coming out in full force, which, if you listen to our first podcast, was not a surprise, because we said once Companions' reign at the top was over, the format would probably revert back to what it was right before their printing, and Team Rec was one of the strongest decks from that previous Theros Beyond Death standard. So no surprise that people are picking that up, because it's just such a powerful deck. Does a lot of things, plays the long game really good, and it's tried and true. So no surprises there. That's probably all we really need to talk about, like you said.
We don't really
need to get into the weeds on
what we're about to get into. So
exactly, why talk about old standards when we can talk about new standards?
New shiny standard.
All right.
So what are you picking up from this set? Now that we have all of the cards released, what are some opinions and thoughts that are coming to mind?
So first off, before we get into any specific cards, I do want to say that this core set, and I've heard this sentiment echoed around the corners of the internet, that this might be the most powerful core set of all time. Wizards is going all out here. They're printing a lot of really pushed cards, a lot of cards that push design space, and I think the biggest thing for me is I'm starting to question whether the core set is as originally intended. Yeah, the original idea of the core sets, or at least how I understood it was a way for Wizards to print simple cards, get people who are new to Magic to come and play. It's there's no specific mechanics. Like if you put mutate in front of a new player, there's going to be some issues. They're not really
there's going to be some confusion. And no, I totally echo what you're saying, because we saw core sets went away in after 2015, right? And they lay dormant for about 4 years because it was thought that they weren't really helping the game any. And then when they were brought back, you're right, it was to introduce new players, have like a more easy solved draft environment that's like less worried about individual synergies. But what we're seeing with Core 21 is all kinds of crazy shenanigans. And I actually was doing some research. I think the only core set that comes close is Core 2011. Now, 2011, if you're unaware, had Fauna Shaman, Primeval Titan. It had the Titan Cycle. It had Sarah Ascendant, Ley Lines, the original Planeswalkers, Lightning Bolt. I think for its time, this would be the earlier iteration. So maybe it's just something that comes around every 10 years. That's what I'm getting from.
I doubt Wizards is planning these meta cycles out so far in advance, but
exactly, the super cycle.
I'm thinking that the core set has kind of shifted roles into being something where Wizards doesn't need to focus so much on the lore of a specific plane. They're not tied down by any themes like that.
Right.
They can really print whatever they want and theoretically print things that are needed in Standard. So there's a lot of cards here that are just kind of answers or specific things that help. There's Containment Priest, which is a reprint. There's Tormod's Crypt. These are all just what would be traditionally sideboard cards, that don't really fit in other spots, but Wizards can print them in here just to shore up any holes in Standard.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, we're seeing a lot of like Graveyard Hate in here, like you were saying, as well as Scavenging Ooze, and then even Kite Sail Freebooter, which was from Ixalan, 1 in a black. When it enters, target opponent reveals their hand, choose a non-creature, non-land from it, exile that card until it leaves the battlefield. We're seeing a lot of stuff that seems just just in time to hopefully prevent some of the issues we've been seeing from being perpetuated as we go forward.
Right. Exactly. Um, yeah, I'm looking through the spoiler right now, and there is so much text on all of
Hmm.
these cards, especially the rares and the mythic rares, but even some of the commons and uncommons.
Oh
There's
yeah,
just a lot to digest. So it's an interesting it's an interesting turn. I mean, I guess it's been coming for some time now, but they really just said this is the new way we're going forward. This is
right.
the new world order when it comes to core sets.
And it seems like it's not. If this is the direction that the core sets are going to go in, which, as an franchise player, I certainly have no problems with, because I think it makes it a more exciting environment to draft or to go to the pre-release for. But it has led to some really awkward, not flavor fails, but like awkward formatting things with the text boxes. And I know we've been talking about this over the last couple of weeks. One of the big ones is, a while ago, protection was seen as a somewhat confusing old mechanic, right? Because protection means a card cannot be targeted or dealt damage to or blocked or attacked, or no, that whole list of things. But
Right,
it
exactly.
applies to,
You don't even know all the things that it
yeah,
does, and you're like,
it applies to both things that your opponent's doing and you're doing. So if something has protection from white, you can't enchant it with a white aura. You can't target it with a white ability or spell. And that was seen as kind of not super, I guess. There's times when you feel like you failed because you couldn't apply this ability yourself. So in Dominaria, of course, we saw Hexproof from coming out. And this was a weirder templated one, which we all know Hexproof. It can't be targeted by our opponent. And then having Hexproof from black or Hexproof from white led it to a more specific thing that was trying to hit that point where you can still target your own creature, but your opponent can't sort of deal stuff to it. And
right. And this is
oh, sorry,
also
go ahead.
after Wizards was moving away from hexproof because it was too much of a not interactable. So it was
Mm,
interesting even back in Dominaria, which what was 2 years ago now.
yeah, 2018.
Geez, time flies. But yeah, this was even back then. We were like, oh, you're bringing hexproof back now. They've really kind of come full circle.
Hmm.
Um,
And now, of course, we're seeing that protection came back. I think in Core 2019, they had a couple cards with protection. We're all like, wait, hold on. I thought protection was done. We were replacing it, and they were like, no, no, it's just not expected to be in most sets. It's I think the word is evergreen they use, where it can come up. No, not evergreen. Like, it can come up sometimes, but of course, what we're all leading to with this is Core Set 2021 has both of these mechanics. We're seeing cards with hexproof from colors, like hexproof from black. I'm trying to find an example right now. And then we also have cards with protection. So when we're
mhm.
circling back to this idea of, are core sets made for new players, how are we supposed to explain to new players that a set has an ability that, no, no, this can only be targeted by you, hexproof from black, where protection, it can't be targeted from anything. And we have the effect that exists from previous sets, and then the effect that was supposed to replace it, and both of them are put together. And it just, I honestly, I'm going to make the mistake more than once, I know it, where I'm just looking at something and totally confusing protection for hexproof from, which I think was a complete failure on Wizards' part to include both sort of templatings in this set, or at least I find it incredibly confusing.
Yeah, it's like we've been saying. It's just interesting to say the least that Wizards has made this shift and kind of gone, you know, come full circle
Hmm.
from things they said. But I'm grateful that I play most of my drafting on Arena because there they won't even let you target it. Like you can't even.
Exactly, yeah, you
So
have a
I'll be
helping
like,
hand.
yeah, I'll be like, why can't I click this? And then it'll actually make me read the card and be like, oh, okay, now I understand.
And then on the complete opposite side of this, we still have some sort of carryovers of trying to cater to this new audience. Like, for example, there's a new enchantment aura, 5 mana, 2 blue and 3, called Enthralling Hold. And we kind of laughed at this when it was shown off a couple days ago. And it's like control magic for 1 extra mana, where you enchant creature and then you control enchanted creature. But it has an additional line of text that says you can't choose an untapped creature as this spell's target as you cast it, which seems like a really long-winded way to end up saying enchant tapped creature. Um, but maybe in a way that's more understandable if you're new to the game and don't really understand tapping or something like that. but to the rest of us, it just reads like a little bit like word vomit. It's so many
Yeah.
extra words to get across one simple idea.
Yeah, generally the shorter, more elegant uh, way to put it is the better way. So I'm there's got to be some weird
Yeah, some edge case
rules
thing going on.
minutia, some weird rules minutia. That's why they worded it that way, because they're generally pretty good at making things concise.
Hmm.
Um, so I don't know what it is, but yeah, it's just let's wrap this up. But yeah,
Yeah.
there's been some interesting decisions with the direction of this core set, whether
Hmm.
how things are templated, what's included,
Right.
etc. But why
But
don't we
all in all,
talk about
still very excited for it.
yes? Oh, for an enfranchised player, this set is a dream. There is a lot of great things. We already talked about a bunch last week. But let's talk about some more. Chev, why don't you start us off with a couple of your favorite picks?
Yeah. So going into this a little bit, I'm immediately drawn to some of the legendary creatures that are coming back with new, either they're like enfranchised and returning characters like Karavek or Teferi's daughter. I forget her name now. Is it Nimbini? Name
Mm,
I think
Na-
it's something like that.
Nambi, not
Yeah,
Bambi.
Nyambi. Yeah.
Nyambi. There you go.
And then of course we have Rada, Heart of Keld, which is this is her third iteration of card, and
Hmm.
this one is the first one that cares about your land specifically. All have cared a little bit about ramp or at least some form. With the first one being a mana dork who also gets mana from attacking. The second gets mana that doesn't leave your pool for each attacking creature, and then finally we have this one. So it's one red, one green, and one generic, 3/3. As long as it's your turn, Rada, Heart of Keld has first strike. You may look at the top card of your library anytime, and you may play lands from the top of your library. Now, that's similar if you remember Courser of Crewfix. And then
Yep.
for 6 mana, Rada gets +X until end of turn, where X is the number of lands you control. So that's beefy. That is an ability that we're seeing sort of that +1/+1 for each land you control on the Black Blade, I think it is, and you have
Yep.
a commander deck with a commander that does something similar. But seeing it
Yeah.
as a
Dak on
pump
Blackblade,
effect,
the original.
yeah, yeah, before the Black Blade was taken from him. But so now we see with Rada where you can actually pump it multiple times, which is insanity. And they're definitely you can see this as in charge of her own builds. You can see Angry Omnath trying to recruit her to its ranks. I think it's a fantastic card.
Yeah, I like this card. I think that if you're building this, you probably just want all three Ratas together.
Yeah.
One for the flavor win, but also they all kind of feed each other, and I think this is uh, the most all-encompassing.
Hmm.
I think this might even see a little bit of play in standard.
Really.
You know, yeah, as we've said many times, ramp strategies are just so strong now, and being
Hmm.
able to pull those lands off the top of your library. I mean, Courser of Crufix saw play pretty much its entire time that it was in standard. If you remember, it was
Right.
in
That's true.
it was a four of in all the Abzan decks with like Siege Rhino and stuff when we started playing.
Hmm.
So this is kind of the same thing. And then since you're already ramping so much, this is a nice beater where a lot of times those decks will have 10, 12 mana. If you can double pump Rata, you know, um,
Hmm.
that's a lot of damage coming your way.
That is a
So
lot of damage.
I wouldn't be surprised if either like the Gruul kind of mid-rangey decks,
Hmm.
or maybe even something like Team of Reclamation plays this in the board. So when if you're sideboarding and you're bringing in counter spells to counter their expansion explosion, well, now all of a sudden they just have a Rata Arrow of Keld, Heart of Keld attacking you for 15 or whatever.
Yeah.
So anyway, I do like that card. That's a good pick.
So, do you want
I
to
think
go into a couple of yours, and we'll kind of go back and forth for this?
yeah. Why don't we do that? So I'm gonna cheat a little bit with my first one, and I'm gonna talk about a whole group of cards.
Mm.
And this is the Shrine Cycle. So if you remember all the way back, or well, I guess we weren't playing back then. We were actually quite young back then. But the original Kamigawa set, they printed this group of legendary enchantments called the Hondens, um, which had a subtype of Shrine, and then each of them would do something on your upkeep, I believe, relative to the number of shrines you had. There was one in each color. The green one, I believe, made tokens. The red one dealt damage. The white one gained you life.
Yeah.
The blue one drew you cards, and the black one made them discard cards, I believe.
Yeah, yeah. I
Something
think it
like
was
that.
discard.
But anyway, we have a cycle that's similar to that now, once again, in this core set. It's all the Sanctum of something. So the white one is the Sanctum of Tranquil Light. The green one is the Sanctum of Fruitful Harvest, etc. And then they all actually don't have something that trigger on your upkeep. Some of them have activated abilities. Some of them have things that trigger at other times. So I'm just going to read a couple of them, and then we can discuss. So the Sanctum of Tranquil Light is just 1 white mana, Legendary Enchantment Shrine, and it has an activated ability of 5 and a white, tap target creature, but this ability costs 1 less for each shrine you control. So theoretically, you could be tapping things for just 1 or 2 mana, which is great to kind of stem a tide of attackers, and it also only costs 1 white. These curve very nicely into each other. So the next one would actually be the Sanctum of Stone Fangs, which is a black one. It's just 1 and a black. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, each opponent loses X life and you gain X life, where X is the number of shrines you control. The green one is 3 mana. It gives you X mana of any one color. The blue one is 4 mana. It draws you X cards, and then you have to discard 1. And then the red one is kind of like a Borborygmos effect. You discard a land card, and then it deals X to target creature planeswalker, where X is the number of shrines you control. That one also costs 3. But they kind of curve out nicely, so I feel like you could, and maybe this is a hint that Chev or I will build a deck that is several shrines. They're a nice little engine, and they do provide kind of enough protection, I think, to build a viable deck, really. With the red one, you can start picking off creatures and planeswalkers. The black one will drain so that you can kind of not only take their life down, but also keep your life up. The white one lets you tap stuff. And then the green one will give you mana to help play those cards. The blue one will refill you. So they kind of all feed into each other, assuming you're playing all of them. So I thought that was a really cool cycle. Also, the Hondens... sorry,
of course, Julian, with the release of Historic Anthology 3, the Hondens have come to Historic, and I know you were looking into the format. I definitely think you could get started with 11 shrines as your starter deck into the format. I think
yes, sir.
Well.
I think that is something that I might have to look into, but there's actually, like you said, there's 11. We talked about those 5, and there was the original 5. There's one more called the Sanctum of All. It's 1 of each color, so Wooburg. And then at the beginning of your upkeep, you may search your library and or graveyard for a shrine card and put it onto the battlefield. Shuffle your library, obviously. And then if an ability of another shrine you control triggers while you control 6 or more shrines, that ability triggers an additional time. So this just buffs all your shrines as well as gets you ones that you might need, or a second copy if you're playing them in a non-commander format. So
yeah, the interesting thing here was, as I was looking into a little when these things were announced, the idea that kind of inspired this second cycle of these shrines was slivers, and how each of them kind of key off of each other. And every time that slivers are brought back in a set, they're brought back with a 5-color legendary. So it was the thought that, yeah, we have 5 new shrines, and of course we need something to tie them together, and this is essentially a shrine lord. Doing a lot of what some of those original Wooburg slivers would do, tutoring for anything that you need.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly does the job. So I'm excited. I think this is it's just cool design space. I like that Wizards is coming back to this. Also, it's definitely something that I'm going to try either in I'll probably try it honestly in Standard, Historic, and also Commander. Or maybe you might beat me to it in Commander, but
yeah, I was already thinking of putting these together with that Okagachi Wooburg Legendary Dragon from, I think it was C17 that came in the Dragon deck.
Yeah.
I think that could be a cool flavor win, and try and do something with Maze's End and all of these good shenanigans that can exist.
Yeah, so just like 5-color, just jank, but like control jank, alternate win cons. Yeah, that would actually be... I feel like that'd be pretty cool. So
well, keep your fingers crossed. We might see it on the Brew Crew site soon.
I have a feeling that we might. Hint, hint, wink, wink. So that was mine. Why don't you give us another one? I was a little
So
long-winded
another one
there.
I want to kind of tackle is, well, I'll give a brief mention of Subira Tulzidi Caravaner, who I think is one of the coolest red legendaries we've seen in a while. She's a red and 2 generic, 2/3. She has haste and the ability for 1 generic, another target creature with power 2 or less can't be blocked this turn, which is pretty powerful because a lot of the times we've seen this ability, it's on a tap trigger of another creature. So this, we can use all of our mana once we have a proper board state and enough little chumps to swing out and be completely unblockable. But what really gets me is the second ability. It's 1 red and 1 tap and discard your hand. Until end of turn, whenever a creature you control with power 2 or less deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Now, the discard your hand, draw cards, that is something we've seen in Red before, obviously, mostly with wheel effects, where get rid of your hand, draw an equal number of cards. But this trigger of whenever a creature you control deals damage, draw a card, that's never seen outside of blue and green. And yes, there's the discard your hand from the front, but if you have a decent board size, this could be massive. And I'm really interested to see where this will be taken in other formats. But, of course, if you tune into the Brew Crew site as we update today, I did put together a pretty sweet commander build behind Subira with a pretty well-known tribe behind her. It's not hard to guess, but I'm not going to give it away so easily. Of little guys that are generally in red. But for more on that, tune into our site. I really want to focus on Conspicuous Snoop, who is this weird little goblin. And I didn't really grasp the significance of it at first. It's 2 red, 2/2. Play with the top card of your library revealed. You may cast goblin spells from the top of your library. And as long as the top card of your library is a goblin card, Conspicuous Snoop has all activated abilities of that card. Now, I thought, okay, this is a pretty cool goblin card. Get to play more goblins, play goblins all the time. But as it slowly dawned on me and a lot of others, as we will cover a little bit in the financial update, just how well this combos with a classic combo piece, Kiki Jiki, to make an infinite board of goblins if Kiki Jiki is on top of your library.
I can see how that would be powerful.
And especially, I'll let you guys in on it right now. It's really making all kinds of goblin tutors start to increase in price as we see one of those grab whatever card, especially I believe it's Bogart Harbinger from
Yep.
one of those, and
Yeah, from the lore and block, it tutors up a goblin
puts it on top
to
of
the
your
top.
library, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
So, you drop that, you put Kiki Jiki on top while Conspicuous Snoop is on the field, and then you can make an infinite board of little guys that could be sack to deal direct damage, swing that turn. The possibilities really are endless considering Kiki Jiki will remain on top for that entire turn. So we're starting to see like some stuff like that, and I definitely did not give the Snoop the respect it deserved when it initially came out, but now I realize it's a force to be reckoned with.
I did not give the Snoop the respect it deserves because it has one of the dorkiest looking arts of all
It
time.
does. The art is pretty ridiculous.
It's great. I love it, but you just I mean, I don't know. Just look at the art. It speaks for itself, and honestly the name is ridiculous too, but yes, powerful card, and I don't know, I expected to see play.
What do you got?
Another card that I expect to see play, and I think we can agree that Conspicuous Snoop is going to see a lot of play in some older formats, maybe Legacy. I think another one that's going to see a lot of play in older formats is Stormwing Entity. So another popular tribe that's been on the rise, Elementals, but it doesn't necessarily need to go in an Elemental deck. This is a 3 blue flying 3/3 with prowess. So that's already reasonable rate,
Yep.
especially if we're talking something like limited or even certain standard formats.
Mm-hmm.
When it enters, you scry 2. Excellent
Okay,
again.
I like it.
We like the filtering. But then the kicker here is not actual kicker, not the mechanic, but this spell costs 2 and a blue less to cast if you've cast an instant or sorcery spell this turn. So that would bring it down to 1 and a blue for a 3/3 flying prowess that scries 2 when it enters the battlefield, which is an extremely good rate. And as we
That's
know,
insane.
in formats like Legacy, like Modern, we're playing all sorts of cheap instant sorcery spells. Lightning bolts, Preordain, Ponder, Serum Visions if you're in Modern, even certain ones that are free, like a Gut Shot, Rip Gataxian Probe, but that would have been there too. So I feel like we're going to be seeing this thing come down a lot of times on turn 2 or 3 in, Modern or Legacy, and it's just going to beat. It's got Evasion already. It kind of sets up your next few draws with that scrying, and then in a kind of Spellslinger, either Is It or Teamer deck, in those sort of things. I'm thinking Teamer Delver from Legacy, or something like that. You're just slinging spells all the time. This thing is going to be easily 5-6 power every turn, swinging in the air. I think it's going to be very powerful. I think it could even see some play in Standard, depending. I mean, there is still an Elementals deck that has pretty strong support.
And I think Opt doesn't rotate until the fall.
Opt, so the Elementals, which were primarily in the last core set, Core 2020, which had like Big Omnath, or not Big Omnath, but Teamer Omnath, and also all the Cavaliers. They don't rotate until the fall. Opt rotates in the fall technically, except it's actually, I just saw it's being reprinted in this set, so that will still be in the format. Yep. So Shock is being reprinted as well. So I think Storming Entity is going to be
I definitely
powerful.
Expect to see it in Standard.
I think actually we talked about this on the last cast, but I think this and Chandra's, I think it's Incinerator. Yeah, the 5 in a red one that costs X less. Red. Yeah, 6/6 trample costs X less, where X is the total amount of non-combat damage dealt. I feel like a blue-red deck with these, a bunch of just like burn spells and a bunch of like cheap card draw spells, I feel like you could really do some significant damage. So keep your eye on that one. That is my second pick. Chev, what do you got now?
My last one I want to highlight is a late comer to the spoiler season. It came after the massive land dump yesterday, but it definitely has the potential for one of the coolest arts, I would say. And this is 9 lives. It's 2 white and 1 generic, an enchantment with hexproof. If a source would deal damage to you, prevent that damage and put an incarnation counter on 9 lives. When there are 9 or more incarnation counters, exile it. And then when it leaves the battlefield, you lose the game. So we're already seeing that, it can't even be targeted, meaning you're going to have to do something with mass removal, or I think there's a couple cards out there now that remove hexproof from permanents your opponents control, but those are definitely more fringe than something like Deafening Clarion.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything in Standard.
There might be a land, but I can't remember. I thought it was one that, taps for 1 generic. Could have come out in the Commander sets, but...
yeah, I believe that's a Commander card. But... Anyway, yeah.
So it's very hard to get rid of, I would say, unless people are really prepared for it. And it, gives you a much longer clock to survive and get up to shenanigans. Especially with things from, I think Ikoria sometimes cared about moving counters around. And you could probably pull off something where you're continuously removing the counters. Or there's that black, blue... he could be from a previous set. I could be thinking of a weird format on Arena. But, of course, as soon as you get into Historic as well, you've got this guy, and then with Wizards talking about bringing back the Amonkhet block to Historic, you've got Solemnity. Now, if you're not familiar, Solemnity prevents counters from being put on permanents you control, which is an interesting combination with 9 lives to effectively make no damage able to kill you.
Solemnity has already done similar things with cards like Phyrexian Unlife in older formats in Commander and stuff. So yeah, this is just another iteration of that, but with the built-in hexproof makes it a lot more stable.
Right. And I don't bring my Selenia Dark Angel deck out of the box much, but this could be something that could see an inclusion in there, where the main theme is to get myself down to about 0 life, and then give someone else 0 life with a life exchange. And this seems like it could get me there.
Yeah.
Or at least prevent me from losing life while I get up to some shenanigans.
Exactly. This definitely is a protection measure. I'm not as high on this card as you are.
Is it because you're a dog person, Julian?
I am a dog person, although, Trev, I do have a soft spot in my heart for your cat.
Beeb is a great cat.
Yes. The thing for me is, So I don't think there's anything that just like mass wipes enchantments. Essentially, that's really the only way you can get around the hexproof for this. So
Hmm.
I think it's safe there. The thing is, you would want to play this in a deck, right, where essentially against an aggro deck or a slow deck, right? But if you're
Right.
playing against an aggro deck and they're attacking you with 4 creatures,
Yeah,
that's
you
four
need
different
some way to get rid of the
sources.
tokens.
Yeah, that's 4 different sources. So all of a sudden, now you have all those counters on there. If there's a way that you can reliably remove counters from this, I think it gets a lot stronger. But I'm unfortunately hesitant. I know that sometimes I'm the voice of reason, but I just I don't know. I do like the art though. The art's super
Hmm.
sweet. And I think that I really think that a lot of these cats are magic cats. Like I'm pretty sure that's Kahira on like the top right.
Really? I didn't
Yeah,
even go that far.
if you look, yeah, if you look the so there's like in the art there's like a cat and then explaining to the
Hmm.
audience in the back there's all these kind of like Lion King-esque star like projections, astral projections, or whatever you want to say. Yeah, and that's definitely Kahira, the Orphan Guard,
Hmm.
from Ikoria. I'm pretty sure that the one right across the way from Kahira is the green white cat commander from when they did tribal decks. I'm telling you, dude.
It
I'm
could
pretty
be
sure
it. Yeah.
one of these is Kembaka region. I'm trying. I'll have to play a game and see if I can name all these at some point. But yeah, okay.
Now, the last thing I will add, so the card I was thinking of is from War of the Spark. It's called Soul Diviner. It's a blue and a black tap to remove, and I'll go into why this is kind of funny. Remove a counter from an artifact, creature, land, or planeswalker you control. Draw a card. Now, it is missing the very specific text to say it can remove a counter from enchantments. So I wonder if that's on purpose. But I think that would be it would have been a totally amazing combo to have Soul
Yeah,
Diviner keep drawing you cards and prevent attacks from big threats. But alas, they saw through that.
yeah. Alas. Um, Before we move on, there is one thing I want to bring up that we kind of glossed over when you were saying it. But Wizards has confirmed that they are attempting to essentially backfill um,
Hmm.
all the sets that aren't on Arena, uh, probably through. Um,
I would say next last few years. I think they were
yeah,
the only things I've heard specifically were Kaladesh and Amonkhet.
yeah, because after Kaladesh and Amonkhet, they had Ixalan, I think.
Ixalan, yeah, Ixalan
Yeah,
and
so that was
Dominaria.
I think Ixalan was like the first thing that was on Arena, and then Dominaria.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I think they're gonna backfill, or they have said they're gonna backfill those. They haven't really described how they're gonna distribute them, and how
Yeah,
people can get those cards. But those cards will come in and they will be legal in um, historic. So that's
something
cool.
to look
There's
forward to.
a lot of powerful cards. I'm looking forward to playing with the Scarab God because since I did not get to play with it when it was in standard, because it was mucho expensive.
Hmm.
All right. Let's get to just a couple more cards.
Sure, yeah.
A card that I absolutely loved when it first came out, and this is odd because I'm not usually like a red card sort of
Hmm.
guy. Is Terror of the Peaks, mythic rare, 3 red for a 5/4 dragon, has flying of course. Spells your opponent's cast that target Terror of the Peaks cost an additional 3 life to cast. And then whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, Terror of the Peaks deals damage equal to that creature's power to any target. So a few things. One, it's already good on rate. It's a
Hmm.
5 mana 5/4 flyer in a tribe that people care about. Trying to even interact with this thing is already going to cost you 3 life. Chev and I, we have said multiple times, started playing during Khan's block. So a card that was very similar to this was Thunderbreak Regent, which was
Yeah,
slightly
that was a
smaller,
pain.
cost a little bit less, but it had this ability for basically all your dragons. Anytime they wanted to target them, um, it was an additional 3 life. Or
Hmm.
the Regent dealt 3 damage to them. So it's already been a proven effect. It's hard to interact with. And then now you're tacking on essentially Warstorm Surge, which is a commander staple. Um,
Hmm.
and just a powerful effect, especially if you're dealing, making a lot of tokens or something. Yeah, it might be only 1 or 2 damage a pop, but if you're making tokens at a reasonable rate, that's a lot of damage coming in. Um, so I could see this in almost maybe even like a something like a Krenko, where he attacks and he makes those tokens,
Oh yeah,
and that's
no,
just a
that would
bunch
be
of damage
brutal.
right there. So this card is sweet. Um, and I think that it's going to be even better once we get rotation and
Hmm.
things like 3 mana Teferi and stuff rotate. Once again,
Right,
kind of
because
like how
that's
we
true. Activated abilities that target it will come with no additional cost.
exactly, and kind of like we talked about Elder Gargaroth last time. Since this does not immediately affect the board or have haste or anything, there's just a few too many things that are working against it. But I think
Right.
once rotation comes, this is going to be a super powerful card. I'm going to try and play with it. I have not played Gruul Monsters in a long time, and
Hmm.
that's always a fun deck. So catch me going, you know, turn 2 Mana Dork, turn 3 Questing Beast, turn 4 Terror of the Peaks. I'll be very happy when I can do
I'm
that.
excited to
So,
see it. If I was watching you, I'd be terrified if I was on the other end.
well, I've gotten beaten down by Questing Beast. Oh, and don't forget, I'll obviously be playing 4 Embercleaves. So
Oh, of
I've
course.
gotten I've gotten beat down by some of that I think I need to return the favor to to those punks on the ladder.
Hmm.
Tear the Peaks, sweet card though. Um, there's just 2 more cards that I want to discuss. Um, actually, maybe 3. I don't know. One that I want to hit real quick as I am scrolling back through is Transmogrify. So this
Hmm.
is 3 and a red for a sorcery rare. Exile target creature. That creature's controller reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal a creature card. They put that card onto the battlefield, shuffle the rest into their library. So it's essentially another what we call polymorph effect.
Hmm.
Polymorph being the original one, which was in blue. Chev, we were talking earlier about how Wizards has pretty much completely moved this. I
This
guess we
effect,
could call it
yeah. So I
this
believe
effect.
the party line is that if it's a spell that gets rid of a creature and replaces it with a known entity, like we're talking rapid hybridization, where it's destroy target creature, target creature's controller puts a 3/3 elf, no, not elf, frog lizard onto the
Frog lizard,
battlefield.
yeah.
Yeah. So if it's a known thing that you're transforming into, that's blue. But effects that put a random creature from your deck out are red due to the chaotic nature of red.
Right. So the first one was probably something like Chaos Warp. So yeah, so they've pretty much
Hmm.
shifted that the polymorph effect into red from blue. Um, I have a problem with this card
What's your problem,
because
Julian?
my problem with this card is this is just another way for people to easily cheat things out in standard that they should not be cheating out.
Mm.
We've discussed
Hmm.
several times that there is a lot of good ramp in the format. So this is not a turn 4 spell. This is a turn 3 spell, maybe even a turn 2 spell if we're playing more powerful formats.
Hmm.
There's a lot of ways to generate tokens easily. Raise the Alarm gives you 2. Omen of the Sun gives you 2. There's a bunch of other things that give you tokens. And essentially, if you're exiling a token creature, it's not a real card, so it's you're up on card advantage.
Right.
And then up until just a couple weeks ago, this could easily pop a Agent of Treachery out, and it can still pop out
Yeah.
all sorts of other things. And I don't understand why Wizards is printing so much of this effect. Essentially, a bunch of the Jeskai Luca deck got banned because you could play Luca, the you know
The planeswalker
face
version of
the
this spell.
face the yes, exactly, the face Planeswalker from Ikoria. You could just play that and then downtick on any random token that you were playing, because you were
Hmm.
playing Fires we mentioned as well, which just made everything free. So you could just do that, and then you get a 7 mana Agent of Treachery on turn 4 or 5,
Hmm.
potentially even sooner if you wanted to play like some ramp in your stuff. I don't know why Wizards is doing this. They also have Winota out, which does roughly the same thing when you're able to dig so deep with Winota, and her triggering off multiple things. I just really think Wizards needs to think about this ability to cheat things into play so easily. You know
Has
what I
has
mean?
Luca been seeing a lot of play recently since Yorion and all that kind of stuff went down?
So I believe Lucas still sees some play, but not nearly as much. It was really it was part of the combo, right? You basically
Yeah.
played Agent of Treachery and you played Luca, and then you had Luca to just get your Agent of Treachery from wherever it was in your deck. It also gave you additional card advantage, but it wasn't as much. But you could get multiple Agent of Treacheries off of Luca because you could just defend it and stuff. Um, so
So
it's
do you
not
see
seeing
this? Do
play.
you see this as like a 4 additional copies of Luca in a deck to help with consistency, or do you see it like being used instead of Luca? Or like my question is, if Luca is not seeing as much play anymore, will there be an actual threat in Transmogrify?
I don't know, but
Mm-hmm.
obviously Wizards is going to continue to print good creatures that you might want to cheat out. And also we're going to
That's fair.
have a change in the format when this comes out in full, and a change in the format when rotation as well as Zendikar comes in the fall. My issue primarily is that um, obviously Wizards was planning this format. They didn't think they were going to have to ban things.
Mm-hmm.
So how did they think it was okay to make another of these effects when there has been so many extremely powerful and busted creatures in the format, and they're just
Mm-hmm.
going to allow us to this is not a card that you play fairly. Do you know what I mean? You don't play this and you're like,
Yeah.
"Oh boy, I hope I hit my Reclamation Sage so I can, blow up their enchantment or something."
Mm-hmm.
No, you play this because you're playing, you know, maybe two different creatures in your deck. That's a total of 8 cards, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna either hit an Agent of Treachery or a blank.
Mm-hmm.
Both of them are gonna win me the game.
Right.
So I just it blows my mind that Wizards thought this was okay, and I genuinely don't like this effect that much because it just gets abused. No one plays this fairly, um, and you would never play this as a removal spell against your opponent because they're playing busted creatures like you are.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think one of the interesting things that I've seen come up online recently is when new cards are spoiled and then someone reminds everyone about certain cards that have been since banned but would have been out in the same format. And I wish I remembered a particular example now, but it was something spoiled in this set, and then someone had said, Oko was going to be legal with this, and everyone kind of had a moment of silence and terror. And so, yeah,
yeah, same
it's
thing with
like
Once Upon a Time.
right. It's that thought that like Agent of Treachery was going to be legal with this, and I think that's basically what you're getting down to. Of there's a fear, especially with the more that this effect is printed, and where we might see something like Fires of Invention, where the reason that it was banned was because all these high-powered cards coming out that weren't tested as heavily against Fires of Invention as new cards were printed in new sets. That this effect might be something similar, where new cards are printed that this wasn't fully tested with, and that could come out and do dangerous things.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there needs to be a look in the mirror at play design, and see what they want to do, because they've been towing the line a lot, and I would rather they just tone themselves down than have to consistently ban things. You know what I mean?
I'm actually of the opposite camp. I prefer. I think that maybe there's a something to be said for not acting as swiftly when something needs to be banned. But I do like testing the boundary a lot and being able to call stuff out when it doesn't work. Now this could be because mainly I'm playing standard on Arena, where if I lose a couple cards, what they seem to do is they give you wild cards equal to that number to try something
Yes.
else out. So there's no real actual loss, I would say. And as it gets a little more digital for formats like standard or less casual formats, I personally am okay with towing the line more. But if you're more swift with the ban hammer to be like, we tried something, it didn't work, we're sorry, let's get this out of here so we can get back to a more healthy environment.
Yeah, I still would prefer the other way instead, but I think, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
if they're going to continue to push like this, they just need to be on it, and they need to essentially let the player base know, okay, now that we've shifted into this new era of
Mm-hmm.
constantly pushing cards, constantly trying new things, there's going to be a lot of overturn. And
Mm-hmm.
you just need to get used to the fact that we could be banning things every 2 weeks or something.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Well,
you know if they make it clear, if the player base knows, and they, you know, are consistent with banning things that are a problem,
Hmm.
I would take that over what we have now
Yeah.
any day.
I think it's what they're trying with historic, because I believe that the statement with historic is like, we technically could ban something any given Monday, and they've used that a couple times now to a little bit of grumbling from the crowd. But it is something that it seems like they're testing the waters of being more like, okay, we can ban whenever. We probably won't, but we reserve the right to if something comes up as super powerful over a weekend or something
See,
like
I
that.
think I think they should just have that in general for standard and historic, and I don't think that they've made that many impactful. Like I don't think they've really banned that much in historic. I think the biggest one was recently when they banned the same
Winota.
cards they banned on a standard in
Yeah, yeah, that's
or
true.
yeah, they banned Winota too, but which was interesting. That was actually like an emergency ban, but they
Yeah.
right before that they banned fires and agent like they did out of standard. So
Mm. All right,
I
let's
don't know.
let's move on
Yeah,
from this
yeah.
talk of all this negativity and banning and such.
Right. I want to talk about just two more cards.
Hmm.
One is Necromentia, one black black. Choose a card name other than a basic land card name. Search target opponent's graveyard, hand, and/or library for any number of those cards and exile them. That is an effect that has been printed on multiple cards throughout the years. We haven't really had one in standard, so
Hmm.
I like this. This is nice to just pull out, specific key pieces, especially if you're playing any sort of best of three match. The
Yeah.
clause with this one is after you do that, uh, the your opponent gets to create a 2/2 black zombie creature for each card exiled this way. So if they're playing four of that
From
card, they're
their
going to get
hand.
four.
So it's you create a 2/2 black zombie creature token for each card exiled from their hand this way.
Oh, I didn't even see that extra word. Okay, well then this card is even better than I thought because I already thought this card was nicely playable just
Hmm.
to pull certain things. Certain decks just can't beat certain cards. So having this way to kind of just get those out and not have to deal with them, that's really nice. And then, if they're instead, I thought they were always going to be making, three or four 2/2 black zombies, but if they're only making one, maybe zero, then this card is great. Um, yeah, this card is phenomenal. I think this is great, especially for any sort of control mirror or something like that. All right, Chev, any thoughts on that card?
No, I mean it's an effect that I'm glad is back, sort of to take down particular strategies. I think it pairs well with another card that is actually a reprint that's coming out in this set. I think it's I'm trying to remember the exact words, but Ruined Halo. I think it's you name a card and then you get protection from that card.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah,
That it's
so
an
as
enchantment
it
for two
enters,
white.
choose a card name. You have protection from the chosen card name. It's 2 white. I think it's really good to see, like, we're seeing these all-star cards that are being played over a large swath of decks, and having these sort of individual answers to those particular cards, I think, is a very useful thing. As you said earlier, as we get into this format of certain cards that are really pushed, it's like, okay, that's terrifying, but we have at least a couple more tools in our disposal to get rid of it or to
Right.
render it inert.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. All right. Last card I want to talk about, Sublime Epiphany. And Chev, you actually showed me this card, so I'll read it out and then let's discuss this because it's a monster. Four
Oh yeah.
generic, four generic, two blue, rare, instant. Choose one or more. Counter target spell.
Hmm.
Counter target activated or triggered ability.
Hmm.
Return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand.
Hmm.
Create a token that's a copy of target creature you control, and target player draws a card. Are there enough modes on this card, Jeff?
I would say no. I think we could easily, fit another one in if we really squeeze to make it
I
at least give it 6 options. Because I think 5 is really, it's not enough, especially when you can only do 5 of them at a time.
Right, yeah. So it's 6 mana. There should be one option for each mana. Um,
Exactly.
but
All these effects are 1 mana effects. We're just kind of gluing them together.
right, exactly. So are they? Last time I checked, cancel was a 3 mana card. Yes. So this card is sweet.
Hmm.
It's basically like Cryptic Command's bigger brother.
Yep.
Um, the fact that you can do all of these is
Yeah.
crazy. I'm personally thinking one of the members of our play group plays Maelstrom Wander consistently. So
Yep.
if he goes Maelstrom Wander and I cast Sublime Epiphany, I can counter Maelstrom Wander. I can also counter the Cascade, or at least one of the Cascades.
Yeah.
I can return something else to someone's hand.
Mm-hmm.
Either something my opponent's control or maybe something I want to trigger again. I can create a token of something that I already have out, and I also get to draw a card. That
Yeah.
seems like an incredible steal for 6 mana.
Yeah, I know. You have to keep open 6 mana, so I am interested to see how many times this is played as a 6 mana counter spell with upside, or more what I think I'd be playing it is I'm playing it for the bottom three abilities, and if I get the chance to counter something, amazing, or terrible for the other person that I then get three other abilities with it. But I'm interested to see, even though this has so many abilities, if it will outrank cards in more eternal formats, then that what was it? It was a 4 mana instant from Eldritch Moon that exiles all spells on the stack.
I think that this one, yes, I know the card you're talking about. I forget the name. I think this. I don't think either will see play in eternal formats, aka everything that's not standard and
Mm-hmm.
commander. I think it just costs too much.
Yeah,
Even
it's a
though it
battle
does
cruiser of a card.
exactly. So this will see play in commander definitely. It's
Mm-hmm.
just it does too many things not to. I look forward to countering your Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger, and also countering its exile trigger. That'll be sweet.
Ooh.
And then also drawing a card, and then also bouncing your Kozilek to your hand. Um,
Well, I'm fine if you bounce Kozilek. I'll just draw four more cards.
nah, that's whatever. I can just counter that too. Um, uh, and then I think it might see some play in standard as a nice like top end
Mm-hmm.
control option. Blue
Yeah,
white
that's a thought.
control. Blue white control still is a deck. It's not
Mm-hmm.
tier 1, but it's tier 2. So they often will just keep 6 mana open. So you can easily just do this. But I just want to highlight this card because it does basically everything I want to do. It's a big splashy instant that I can just hold my mana open for. Um, and also it's just once again, Wizards is just really they're just like, here, you want some more text? Here it is. So yeah, that's the last card I wanted to talk about. Jeff, is there anything else that you want to discuss?
No, I think we've covered all the major points. So obviously, there's tons of goodies in the set for everyone. We just listed our favorites or things we're looking forward to, or that you might see on the Brew Crew in particular things in future. But if there's anything that you guys think is really interesting out there, or something that you really want to see from us, always feel free to reach out, and we will totally think about it and write an article about it because there's just so much good content here. We can only cover so much in a podcast that's already probably one of our longer ones.
Yeah, 100%. Um, there will be Core 21 themed things coming down the pipeline real soon. So that's almost it for us. But we do want to talk about one more thing, and it's a new segment that we're introducing here on the Brew Crew podcast, and that's finance time with Chip.
So the idea here is, like everyone has the ability to get the Goldfish Weekly newsletter, or they check mtgstocks.com for the more updates on the individual cards. So we'll kind of go over that a little bit, but I want to more talk about some of the bigger trends that are going on, or some of the things that people should be aware of. Like starting off, since Core 21 is coming out, we have this big set. Reprints are probably starting to go down a little bit in price, but you should probably wait before you jump on those because the set still hasn't actually come to paper yet. And we're seeing some of the stuff like we talked about earlier with the little goblin guy, Conspicuous Snoop, and the cards that kind of combo with him, Bogart Harbinger, and older, I think it's Goblin Recruiter, and other stuff. These are starting to see a slow uptick in price as people are preparing. Maybe not necessarily to buy them out, but they definitely want to try these combos in the older formats. So if these older cards are something that you're interested, or in these combos, it might be time to look into picking a copy up before they get really up there. I would, just like I mentioned with the reprints, I would wait on buying the Core 21 cards because they are always inflated prior to release, and everything drops, at least a few dollars when it actually hits paper. So be a little bit cautious about that. And the last thing I want to bring up is it's about time for us to look back at mystery boosters. Now, reprint sets generally hit their floor of value between 3 to 6 months after release, and this set was certainly no exception. The set has 1,600 cards, so there's bound to be stuff in there that you need, and I'm sure local game stores would happily, service or help you out if you're looking for individual stuff, because right now everyone needs all the support we can give them. And there's more inventory out there since Wizards was kind enough to give mystery boosters packs to a lot of stores that were hurt by COVID-19. Now, what I'm really interested in this is the foils that came with all of the retail packs. Now, this was definitely like sort of an add-on feature that was interesting, but probably not something that everyone was looking for. And as a result, the prices on cards that were of those foil treatments has absolutely cratered. As an example, this last week I was able to pick up a copy of Conspiracy, which is that old black card that makes all creatures a given type. Lich's
Yep.
Mirror, which does a good job with, another one of those cards that prevents you from death.
Right.
Reki, History of Kamigawa, draw a card, I think every time you cast a creature.
Legendary spell.
Legendary spell. Perfect. That's much, much more balanced. Runetail, Kitsune Ascendant, which is a nasty card that basically prevents all combat damage in Commander. Norn's Annex, another sort of version of Propaganda, and a foil version of Not of This World, the 7 mana colorless spell that costs 7 less if a spell is targeting a permanent you control and it counters target spell. And I picked up all of those for $15, which also could get you a copy of Sen Triplets, which is normally a $40 card. So these foils are really not getting the attention they deserve, and everything that you could possibly think of wanting from this set is so much cheaper. Like a foil Karthus Tyrant of Jund is only $5 if you're thinking of dragons, and so
That's
it's definitely
ridiculous.
something. It's crazy, and you should 100% look at these and pick them up soon. And remember, these aren't like the foil from the vault printings either. These are actual foil treatments of cards. And so, if you're worried too much about them bending or things like that, since it is foil, you still have to worry about that a little bit, but certainly not as much as other of the supplemental products do. So it's really something you should take a peek at if you haven't already. And I think that's it for the word vomit that is the financial section of this podcast.
Trev, I actually do have a couple financial questions for you, real quick.
Sure.
One, if there is one card that you would pick to speculate on in this set, could you give us a little insight on that?
Yeah, so I generally I'm not a huge fan of speculation. I would see it more as if there's a couple cards you might want to pick up before they get ridiculously expensive for your formats. The only thing that I would ever think is like worth really investing money in for my like buying multiple copies is uh, basic lands you like, or things that you're worried about you might not have access to 2 or 3 copies. But I'm certainly not the kind of guy who likes the idea of getting 10, 15 copies of a reserved list card and hoping to watch the price like jump up. That takes a lot of fun out of the game for me. But so I would look out for anything that you think has synergies with existing formats or cards, and definitely look to Reddit for all the comments of people putting in like, "Oh, this works really well with something else," because then that's something you really want to jump on. I think Chromatic Orrery is going to be huge when it starts coming out, and I think we're just touching the tip of the iceberg with it in Standard and Eternal formats, which are probably the largest consumer of paper Magic cards at this point. Is going to see a lot of stuff there, and it's probably Chandra's Incinerator, I would say. I think that even if it comes out and it's not really looked at, it has the chance to really grow in future.
Word, word. All right, my last question for you is: we are slowly coming out of quarantine right now. I'm in phase 2. I think you're also in phase 2 where you are.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think the fact that we're still in a COVID-19 world is going to affect the prices of these either in print run, in distribution, things like that? How do you think that's going to roll out?
So initially we saw a large, so when quarantine started, very little in terms of paper Magic was moving. The prices were relatively stagnant. But since there weren't new strategies being tried out in paper, there weren't people going to FNMs and doing new stuff. We have seen that sort of change a little bit as the economy opened up, as local game stores became more, yeah, open, and you could go and pick up cards. And especially with Core 21, things are kind of getting back into full swing with cards being purchased. We have seen some announcements from Wizards that these initial print runs are going to be a little bit smaller, or certain cards or certain runs have less availability. So that might cause these prices to kind of shoot up a little bit in the short term. But I certainly don't see much difference in these cards. If we were to look back a couple months from now when hopefully quarantine is over and we're all still being, socially distant and all that stuff. But I don't see that the quarantine will have a everlasting effect on this set or Magic in general during this period.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, that's the moves on the money, as they would say. Chev, thank you for enlightening us. And I think that's gonna do it for us, right?
Yeah, I think that's all we wanted to talk about. We definitely talked to you guys' ears off about Core 21. So let us know if you think we missed anything.
Excellent. All right, and stay tuned for some Core 21 themed discussions, some brews, and just more excellent content here on the Brew Crew.
Hmm.
This is Julian, and for Chev, we are signing out.